Hello, everybody, and welcome into the recruiting rundown here on Gamecock Central. Kendall Smith and Wes Mitchell joining you here, and we weren't with you last week for recruiting rundown. It's all Wes's fault, everybody. Blame Wes in the comments. Wes, what have you been doing? Come on.
I mean, I'll take the blame on this one, Kendall. I almost didn't know if we were going to get this ship off the ground. We were getting error messages over here. Kendall couldn't get logged in, but we are here. We're ready to talk South Carolina recruiting. Kendall.
We overcame some obstacles to be here. That's how important this show is for us to have for all of you. So we hope that you're doing well. We're excited to talk some South Carolina football recruiting. And Wes, let's talk about a pretty big time practice that you were at earlier this week, the York County Football Showcase. It had 5 different high schools from the local York County area that all practiced together jointly. And they invited a bunch of colleges out to come watch a lot of these uncommitted seniors. So over 50 colleges were there. South Carolina was one of those schools that was there. And one of their big time targets, Tamarion Watkins, who is out of Northwestern High School. He's a safety. He was there. He just announced his top 4 this week. Obviously, South Carolina is in it. So what'd you make of that whole experience and what you saw out of him?
Yeah, I think first of all, I wanted to give a shout out to those high schools and to whoever organized the entire thing. Very well done. 50 plus schools were represented there. Torian Gray and Mike Furry from South Carolina were on hand watching some defensive backs and a wide receiver, who South Carolina is recruiting. Torian Gray also is typically kind of your Rock Hill area recruiter for South Carolina, so it made sense that he was there. But just a great event. You had South Point, Northwestern, Rock Hill High, kind of the big 3 from Rock Hill, all represented there. And then you had Indian Land and Catawba Ridge who were there too. So very cool event. I hope more areas of the state will try to copy that moving forward, because I think it's not only great for these high-profile kids that we talk about and we already know about, but for the guys who maybe don't get recognized yet and are just looking for exposure. Maybe a coach recognizes somebody there, says, hey, let's keep an eye on that kid, and it leads to more offers. So great event, very well put together. And like you said, so Watkins was probably what you would say your top uncommitted rising senior. So Jazavian Currents, the South Carolina commitment from South Point, he was there, of course, highly recruited guy at safety. But Watkins at this point not committed to anyone. Final 4 is out. That includes South Carolina, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Miami. And 3 of those 4 schools, so like I said, the Gamecocks, but then Georgia had a couple coaches there. Texas A&M had a coach there all the way from Texas. Didn't see anybody from Miami, but so 3 of the 4 were there. And, this recruitment is finally starting to wind down, I would say, Kendall. We always talk about the June OV season that's coming up. We'll talk about that here in a moment, but he's another one of those guys that's going to be on campus at South Carolina in June. And he wants to see all 4 of those schools, and then probably, I believe, will make a decision shortly after that. But this is one where South Carolina got in on him early, has built those strong relationships. I would be almost shocked if it's not South Carolina or Georgia. And then one step further, I would be pretty surprised if it's not ultimately South Carolina. You look at the relationships, you look at just even the way he talks about his connection with the South Carolina coaches, the fact that it's right down I-77 from Rock Hill to Columbia. There's a lot that is going South Carolina's way here, I think, and ultimately they got to survive all these visits, of course, but I do think at least entering those visits, South Carolina's in a really good shape, I think, with Watkins.
Well, speaking of official visits, South Carolina typically receives glowing reviews when it comes to the experiences that these athletes have on their official visits at South Carolina. And as we sit here right now, Friday, May 16th, Wes, this is so exciting because we are just 2 weeks away from the first group of official visits to come through Columbia for this summer. So as we look ahead, as we anticipate what's to come, and all of these guys that are major targets for South Carolina that are going to come visit Columbia, obviously the Gamecocks are going to try to put on a great experience for them. What are your expectations for that first weekend that's coming up here in just 2 weeks from today?
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating. We track these visits all off season, really for the last few months. And as you get closer and closer, if you're doing it right, the list of expected visitors, it will get more and more accurate because, things can be changed, things can be tweaked, guys can drop a school, guys can add a school, they can change a date. So right now, though, with what we have on Gamecock Central, we've got, let's see, 8 confirmed official visitors that I feel pretty strongly are going to be on campus that first weekend. Could see maybe a 9th or 10th be added is my expectation as well between now and when that actually happens. But the biggest name on this list, Kendall, is Carter Meadows. He's a 5-star edge from Washington, D.C., South Carolina, once again trying to tap into that kind of little pipeline they've built from Columbia or from the DMV to Columbia. And another Sterling Lucas recruit here where he has put South Carolina in his top 4 as well. And the Gamecocks are battling a trio of Big Ten schools there. So it's kind of interesting. The only SEC school in the mix. He took a multi-day visit to South Carolina earlier in the spring, had a really good time, set the OV. And, this is one of those, you're battling for a 5-star guy. He's the number 6 overall prospect in the country on On3's rankings. It's going to be tough, right? Like these other schools are going to make it very difficult on you. But just to be in the game here, to have that opportunity to try and sell someone on coming in and maybe playing opposite of Dylan Stewart at that edge spot is certainly something for Gamecock fans to track and be excited about. Most of the names, if you go to Gamecock Central and look at our list, most of the names for that weekend are ones that we have been tracking for some time that fans already have read at some point. Hey, this guy's going to be on campus for an official visit. The newest one, kind of the latest addition to that list that we added earlier in the week, Kendall, is Vero Beach. That's in Florida. 4-star offensive lineman Micah Smith, who is someone that fans have maybe heard of. He's visited multiple times before, but we didn't have him down as a confirmed official visitor until earlier this week. But that is now confirmed. He'll be in for that May 30th weekend. And like I said, right now that number is at about 8, potentially 9 or so. And that's normally what it ends up being. They like to have the number big enough that it's a big weekend, but small enough that it's manageable, that all the players feel like they get personal time with the coaches, that you're not having to share kind of that spotlight with 50 other players or anything like that. So typically it's right around 10, a little bit less, a little bit more once it really kind of locks in and those weekends actually happen.
Well, the good news is that after all of these official visits, Wes and Chris Clark work very hard to make sure that they are getting feedback from the guys that come out to Columbia, go on official visits. So head to GamecockCentral.com because that's where you will find all of that information and obviously leading up to the official visits as well. If anything changes, we will let you know. But it's not the only official visit weekend that South Carolina has on the books. There are several more after that. So it should be a busy next couple of months for the Gamecocks as they gear up for these visits. And then before we know it, Wes, we'll be talking about the season and we'll be talking about guys that are coming out to various games in Columbia throughout the 2025 football season. So certainly can't wait for that. And we always say it on this show, recruiting truly never, ever stops. So that's why we're going to keep bringing you the recruiting rundown here on Gamecock Central. Wes, always appreciate your insight. We appreciate all of you for joining us here on the show. We'll be back next week with more. So for Wes Mitchell, I'm Kendall Smith. Have a great week, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. This has been the Recruiting Rundown here on Gamecock Central. Bye.